Hello and welcome to another video aiming to get you the very top grades. Today I'm going to introduce you to 4 themes from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Hopefully you'll be able to use at least 2 of these in any exam answer, and you'll get to really delve into what made Stevenson write this novella. Let's begin with a big one, the theme of Christianity. Now this is fundamental to the understanding of the novella, but it is a troublesome one because 99% of Stevenson's readers would have been devout Christians. They would all have believed in God and that Jesus died to save us all. However, there is quite a lot of evidence to suggest that Stevenson himself was not Christian, and he in fact left Britain and died abroad because he was not happy with the constraints of society, and one of those constraints was Christian morality and how Christian teaching tells us we need to behave. So Stevenson himself is slightly Edward Hyde-like. He doesn't like this veneer of respectability which he thinks Christianity represents. But of course, he can't come straight out and say to Christians, actually, I think you're all hypocrites, because that would alienate his readership. So all he can do is plant enough clues for the discerning reader, somebody like you, to work out what he really thinks. Let's have a look at a passage. This was the shocking thing. So this is Jekyll in his letter explaining about what happened to him when he became Hyde. That the slime of the pit seemed to utter cries and voices. So the slime of the pit is a metaphor, and it refers to hell. The pit is hell, and what he's suggesting is that Hyde has come out of this pit of hell and that he is like slime. He's not human. But he has cries and he has voices. He's not just one voice. It's as though Hyde has many voices, one for each desire. And the amorphous dust gesticulated and sinned. Well, here he's having a criticism of God. Let's just think about this. So in Genesis, God creates Adam and Eve, well, certainly Adam, out of mud, out of dust. And then he creates Eve from Adam's rib. So all mankind comes from dust. And amorphous means without a form. So originally it's just dust, and then it is given a human form. But what does that human form do? It acquires gestures and actions, and it is immediately turned towards sin. So one profound question that Stevenson is asking here is, if sin is so wrong, why has God created human beings who are drawn to sin? I mean, what's the point? And also, beyond that, maybe the point is that we will be drawn towards sin. That's why our human nature is as it is, and perhaps what we view as sin isn't. Now, this is super profound because I want you to think about this. When we're first introduced to Hyde, what's his worst act? He knocks over a little girl who is running in the middle of the night. Hyde doesn't see her coming. She bashes into him, and all he does is keep going because she's so little, and he takes one step forward because he can't just stop. He'd fall over himself. He takes one step, and obviously that step lands on her body, but he doesn't trample her or anything, and he carries on, and the doctor comes along and says, actually, she's not really been hurt. Now, this is treated as some kind of incredible sin. In fact, her family actually want to kill him. But look at the irony of this. All Hyde has been doing is walking quickly in the middle of the night, and it's the family who want to commit murder, and it's the family who extort £100 from him just for knocking a girl over as she ran into him. Now, this is appalling behaviour, but it is Hyde who is presented as the horrible human being here. Now, if we jump forward to the one crime we know he does commit, killing Sir Danvers Carew, that's after Jekyll has imprisoned Hyde inside Jekyll for 12 months. In other words, Hyde has been locked up in solitary confinement inside Jekyll's mind and body, unable to express himself for 12 months. He's mentally damaged. And it's not necessarily his evil nature that leads to him committing murder. It must partly be the way he's been treated by Jekyll and by society. So the sophisticated point about sin here is that Stevenson is suggesting what society regards as sin, for example lust or gambling or homosexuality, is a social construct. It isn't necessarily a sin at all. It's just a set of rules that we've put together to agree as a society. And it's once that human nature is repressed, once Hyde is repressed and not allowed to indulge his just normal human desires, that's when he becomes truly evil and turns to murder. In other words, that evil is not necessarily a natural state of being. It's one that is produced by Christianity. It's one that's produced by our sense of what is morally acceptable. Now, because Jekyll himself is a Christian, he now describes himself as being attacked by his own evil nature, the evil nature that gives birth to Hyde. Here we go. And this again, that the insurgent horror was knit to him closer than a wife, closer than an eye. So this is his evil nature that's closer inside him even than his eye is, or closer to him even than a wife would be. The evil lay caged in his flesh, where he heard it mutter, and felt it struggle to be born. And at every hour of weakness, and in the confidence of slumber, prevailed against him, and deposed him out of life. Now, this description happens before Hyde commits any murder. This description is just about the creation of Hyde, who is able to indulge in Jekyll's desires. And it's the Christian view that Jekyll's desires are evil, and the life that he has been taken from, deposed out of, is of course everlasting life, the idea that Jekyll's soul will go to heaven. It can't go to heaven because he is indulging in evil pleasures in the form of Hyde. But if you're Stevenson and you think there is no God, and therefore you think there is no heaven, why shouldn't you give in to your desires, those desires that society thinks are wrong? But what if society is wrong? And this is a powerful clue as to why Stevenson leaves England, not just for his health, not just to escape the effects of tuberculosis, but also to escape the effects of living in a repressive society that stops him indulging in human pleasures. And closely allied to this is the theme of curiosity that appears throughout the novella. So curiosity is the thing that makes a good reader, and by extension it's the thing that makes a good writer. But what's the attitude of the characters towards curiosity? Well, Jekyll, of course, is the most curious character. He is the one who wishes to discover scientifically what it would be like to take from within our personalities different personalities based on different desires. And so his curiosity creates Hyde, and ultimately he's punished for it by being executed. The writer kills him off for it. Yet curiosity is a great thing for the reader. So we tend to see the novel through the viewpoint of Mr. Utterson. And what's Mr. Utterson's role in curiosity? This is what he says. If he be Mr. Hyde, he had thought, I shall be Mr. Seek. And the amusing reference to the children's game is actually Stevenson's way of saying, look, this is a very human desire. I don't think he's dismissing it as a childish impulse. He's actually saying that even children are curious straight away to uncover things because that is human nature. But look what happens when we become adults. It is one thing to mortify, that means to put a stop to or kill. It's one thing to kill curiosity, another to conquer it. So here, society is suggesting that there are some things that we shouldn't be curious about. So hopefully you'll remember that when the novel begins, Enfield and Utterson are taking a walk, and Enfield doesn't want to find out more about Dr. Jekyll. He wants to keep Dr. Jekyll's relationship with Hyde secret. He doesn't even tell Utterson about it, and then Utterson has to find it out for himself. So society, in the form of Enfield, believes in repressing curiosity, not looking to find the truth in things. But Utterson is different. He does want to find out the truth, which is lucky because we, the readers, feel the same way, and Utterson delivers that story to us to satisfy our curiosity. Next, we have the words of Jekyll. But there was one curious circumstance. I had taken a loathing to my gentleman at first sight. Sorry, it's not Jekyll, it's Utterson. So he is deciding that this is very odd, that he's just looked at Hyde and been disgusted by him. Do you know what? I'm talking rubbish. So that was Enfield. This is when he first sees Hyde after he's trampled on the girl. Now, Enfield is pointing out something that we should be curious about. It's like a warning to the reader right at the beginning of the novel that the most important thing about Hyde isn't the sin he has apparently committed by trampling on the girl. Oh no. What is most interesting about Hyde is the reaction of everybody else to him. I had taken a loathing to my gentleman at first sight. Now, many readers, of course, would take this to mean that Hyde is the embodiment of evil, but because we are not evil and are mainly good, and certainly strive to be good, our own natures would rebel against seeing something that was against nature, which Hyde is, something that is produced against the will of God. So Jekyll has gone against God's desires in creating Hyde. He's actually created life, which is something only God can do. So this is a really blasphemous act. So Christian readers would see this loathing as evidence that Enfield is on the side of good. He's a religious man. He's obviously a moral man. And that loathing is simply evidence of how evil Hyde is. But let's flip that and look at it from the point of view of someone who doesn't believe in God, someone who doesn't believe in Christianity, someone like Stevenson. Well, Stevenson's perspective would therefore be, this loathing is itself evil. This victimization of Hyde is evil. This disgust and exploitation of him through blackmail is evil. In fact, Enfield calls the house Blackmail House. Now, a Christian reader will think, well, it's called Blackmail House because the only possible explanation for Dr. Jekyll giving Hyde money is that Hyde is blackmailing Dr. Jekyll. But something more subtle is going on. It's also Blackmail House because this is where the girl's family and Enfield blackmail Hyde. They force Hyde to give them money, or else they will discredit him in public. So when we get this quotation at the beginning of the novel, the one curious circumstance, this is Stevenson's way of undermining the story. He's saying to us, look, this Christian story of divine punishment being given out to Dr. Jekyll for committing this evil act of creating Hyde, and the divine punishment given out to Hyde for being a murderer, this, he says, this is actually not the true story. The true story is that we are denying our own human natures, just like Jekyll was denying the Hyde within. And it's when we deny our own human nature, when we cease being curious about what we're really like, that is when tragedy happens, because part of our identity has been kept in a cage, and then when it's let out, that's when tragedy occurs. Well, I promised you 4 themes at the beginning, but you've already been with me for 15 minutes. I think I'll give you a break. Well done for sticking with this grade 9 analysis of themes. And as usual, pop your comments down below. Give the video a like if you like it. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more.